Have you ever finished a story and years later still think about it? Or is one that you remember while you look at that bookshelf and think about that cover and you just be like, yeah, this is the book that I remember reading, remember sitting down in a little cocoon and just gobbling it up. And then there are other books that are popular, that are unforgettable to some, but forgettable to most. I didn't even finish this book, but I heard it was popular and I got it. And it didn't click with me. So, the question is, why do some stories stay with us and others don't? There are stories that live in our heads rent-free. Stories we bring up in random conversations, stories that change how we see ourselves, love, fear, even family. And then there are stories that we consumed once and never think about again. Not because they were bad, well, some of them were, but because they never really connected. Today, I want to talk about why that happens. So, the question is, what makes a story unforgettable? I think the biggest reason a story sticks with us isn't how perfect it is. It's how it made us feel. For example, a story can have plot holes, it can be messy, it can even be a little cringe, but if it makes you feel seen, understood, or emotional, or a common word that's used in everyday language, relatable, you remember it. That's why people still talk about Twilight for the nostalgic of it all, or the Hunger Games for the dystopian impact it brought, or Red Dead Redemption 2 for the characters, for the emotions. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. Or Cyberpunk for just the craziness of it all. Check out that video if you haven't seen it either. They weren't perfect, but they were felt. Stories stay with us when the characters feel real, not flawless, like how I just butchered that word for a second, not always likable, but human. Characters who make bad choices, characters who contradict themselves, those are the characters that you talk about. You know, those are the characters that people are talking about even while they're slamming that character. They're getting you to talk. It's almost like in WWE when there's a face and there's a heel. They're booing the heel, but the face is getting cheered, but it's both good for is getting people a reaction. So characters who want something deeply and are scared they never get it, when a character feels real, we just don't watch them. We carry them, if that makes sense. That's why certain characters feel like old friends or old wounds. Like when somebody bring up, I don't know, Newt from the Maze Runner. Oh, Newt. You know, it feels like, oh, I love that character, you know? Another point is stories stay with us because they know what they're about. Hear me out. When somebody's creating a story, right? An author, a producer, somebody who's creating that story, it is best if that person knows the purpose of what they're creating. I'm telling you this now, when somebody doesn't know the purpose of it, it hangs down. It feels like a cliff that doesn't seem safe. Okay, actually, it is not safe for you bring in something that either you cared about for a moment or you cared to find a value in it like money. So when there's no purpose and no why, it feels dry. For example, it could be so simple. A story about love. A story about loss. A story about identity. A story about survival. A story about me. When a story has purpose, everything, the plot, the characters, the ending, points back to that core idea. So it makes sense. Even if the audience don't know what's going to happen, you need to know what's going to happen. So it can all make sense in the end. Honestly, your character's beginning and the end. You don't need to know all the middle mumble jumble, but you need to know how it's going to start and how it's going to end. When I'm writing my book, I know how I want it to start. I know how I want to end. The middle, that's just discovery writing at that point, because I like to know what my character is going to choose. It's almost like playing The Sims. You leave your character to go do something else, but you have an idea of what's going to happen, right? But something throws a wrench into your plans of what they are going to become. Like your Sims get pregnant. When did this happen? How? But does that change the end goal? For me, it really doesn't, because I know it's going to get there at some point. Just, it may look different than how I thought. You get what I'm saying here? You get what I'm saying? Stories without purpose why did I struggle to say that? Stories without purpose might still be entertaining. Okay? You see those quotation marks? Entertaining. And that means like, okay, it's okay, but they will fade. They won't last as long. Anyway, sometimes a story sticks with us because of when we experience it too. I like to talk about Twilight because it's something that I experienced and was like one of the very first movies that I particularly like really remembered, you know? So I like to talk about it. We'll run it back to that nostalgic feeling. So who we were at that time, what we were going through, a story you watch at 14 will hit differently than the same story at 24. Like, I look back at it now and I'm like, this is a comedy. But before, I was eating it up. Team Edward or Team Jacob. That's why I think the movies now or TV shows now, you look back on it later and be like, why? Or you might still love it. I don't know. And here's the part I love the most. The stories that stay with us aren't always the best ones. Why I say this, not everybody's going to love the story that you love. But it's the fact that you are keeping it in your memory is the best part. Oh, she is making herself known. The ones that meant something personally, like we run it back, that word again, a third time, nostalgic. I just think that is a fuel for a lot of movies that are in the past. Some of them are really great, like Titanic, really amazing, but some movies are just nostalgic, like the SpongeBob movie, the first one, not the second one, not the third one, the first one, the best one, is just good to me, but to others it might seem dumb. But would that change your mind? No. They held a mirror up to us. They made us feel less alone. They made us question something. They remind us of who we were or who we wanted to become. Think about that, y'all. If you're a writer, a storyteller, or a creator, don't chase perfection. I feel like that's such a word that goes around. Perfection, perfection. I want it to be perfect. I want it to be perfect. But in reality, no life right now is perfect. That's why you see labels on stuff that's saying caution, caution, caution. It's man-made. Think about that, y'all. Think about that. So instead of chasing perfection, I say chase honesty. Chase emotions. Chase meaning. If your character's annoying to you, but it's your character, then that's just that. That's the realest thing you can get. When you don't like your character, that is honestly the most realist you can get with that, because sometimes your character do stupid stuff and you'd be like, ugh. I think it's a beautiful thing, because you still love them at the end of the day. Because people don't remember perfect stories. They remember the ones that made them feel something. Okay? So now I want to ask you, what's the story that stayed with you and why? Was it the characters, the message, the timing? Tell me in the comments. I love to know. And with that being said, I'll see you around. Bye bye.